phones, Babylons can't crack the code.
Every year in recruiting, the players that are hyped up the most in each class are the 5 stars, 4 stars, and especially anybody that is ranked inside the top 100. These guys are expected to be huge impacts for the programs they commit to and are expected to be pro players down the line. But just because you're ranked inside the top 100 or are a 5-star prospect, have a lot of hype surrounding your name going into college, it does not guarantee that you're going to be the next big thing on the collegiate level or even play a down in the NFL. In today's video, I'm going to be talking about 5 prospects that are very highly touted coming out of high school and what went wrong for them in their college football careers. Before I move on, remember to smash that like button and subscribe if you haven't already. Now let's get into it. The first player that I'm going to be talking about in today's video is probably someone that everyone knows his story, especially on the college football side of YouTube. In the class of 2017, Tate Martell was a top 100 prospect according to the 24/7 Sports Composite Rankings, a 4-star, the number 56 player nationally, and the number 2 dual-threat quarterback. Also at Bishop Gorman, he did not lose a game while he was a quarterback there, and he put up some extremely great numbers as a quarterback. Over 7,500 passing yards in 3 seasons, 113 touchdown passes in the air compared to only 9 career interceptions, 2,000 plus rushing yards, and 35 total rushing touchdowns. He would end up choosing the Buckeyes for his next step after high school. Martell's college football career went as planned in the beginning. As his first year at Ohio State, he redshirted. The second year as a backup quarterback that played sparingly but did show some promise as he threw for 269 yards, completing 82% of his passes, had 1 touchdown, and also 100 plus rushing yards and 2 rushing touchdowns. And early on in that season, it was thought he was going to be the next starting quarterback in the next season in 2019. However, that wouldn't be the case. Justin Fields came into town, and Tate Martell would hit the portal and end up in Miami. Tate Martell and his time at Miami is really where things would take a turn for the worse in his college football career and his potential pro prospects. As when he announced his move to Miami, you could argue that he was more than likely going to be a starter in many people's eyes. However, that was never the case. Tate Martell was a 3rd-string quarterback at Miami and barely played at all. He attempted 1 pass on the season for 7 yards. And had a total of 7 rushing attempts for 7 yards, and even played a little wide receiver at one point. In 2020, his final season there, he opted out of the season. He would then enter the portal for a second time and end up at UNLV. At UNLV for 2021, he had a chance to win the starting job and would not come out on top. And in that season, he only attempted 6 pass attempts and completed 2 of them for a total of 27 yards, while rushing the ball for a total of 4 times. After the 2021 campaign, despite another year of eligibility, Tate Martell announced he was retiring from football. When talking about Tate Martell and what went wrong in his college football career, it simply had to be the fact that he could never win a job. You could also argue that his size did not help him being a 5'10", 200-pound quarterback. In some cases, yes, that does end up being something that doesn't deter anyone as a starter on the collegiate level, but in this case, it may have deterred Tate Martell. And some people may argue that his attitude that was shown in high school may have caused his potential downfall. However, I cannot prove that for a fact, and you cannot necessarily say there are any articles backing this in his collegiate career. So I'm going to mainly say his downfall came to the fact that maybe his size and the fact that he could never win a starting job. Another quarterback that was very highly touted coming out of high school was Max Brown, who was from the 2013 recruiting class and was a 5-star prospect, the number 11 player nationally, and the number 1 pro-style quarterback that would end up choosing USC for college. Max Brown spent the first few years of his collegiate career at USC as a backup quarterback. There was a couple seasons in which he did have an opportunity to win the starting job heading into the season, but ultimately, he would always come out on the losing side of things. However, going into 2016 for USC, he would win the starting job over Sam Darnold. However, after some early play in the season that wasn't the best for Max Brown, he would lose the job very early on and would be the backup for the majority of that 2016 season. And after that year, he would end up transferring to Pitt, finishing his career at USC, in which he completed 62% of his passes, threw for 650 yards, 2 touchdowns, and 2 interceptions through the air. In his final year of college football at Pitt now in 2017, he was the starter. And he did look like he was an improved quarterback from the year prior to 2017, and he was the starter for the Panthers. He appeared in 6 games before suffering a season-ending injury versus a game against Syracuse. In this season, he completed 71% of his passes, threw for 997 yards, 5 touchdowns compared to 2 interceptions, and just like that, his college career was over, in which he completed nearly 67% of his passes, threw for 1,647 yards, 7 touchdowns compared to only 4 interceptions. He went undrafted in 2018 and would get a tryout for the Steelers, but ultimately, nothing ever came of it, and his football career was over. In my opinion, what went wrong with Max Brown? Of course, he didn't win those starting job battles early on into his career at USC, but finally when he did win one, he struggled mightily and lost that job very early on to Sam Darnold. Then when he transferred to Pitt, he did improve as a quarterback and as a player, but it was a very small sample size in those 6 games, and it wasn't like he was a dominant quarterback. And looking at his college football career, he didn't have exactly the best track record or really the most in-depth track record as a starter. So NFL teams aren't going to be biting at someone that only started roughly a handful of games and wasn't necessarily an elite level quarterback. Moving on to the next player from the class of 2013, running back Derrick Greene. Derrick Greene was a 5-star composite player, the number 27 player nationally, and the number 4 running back in the class. He would end up choosing Michigan over 34 other schools. Greene would spend a total of 3 seasons at Michigan as a Wolverine, as he would rush for a total of 898 yards on 212 attempts in 3 seasons, averaging just over 4 yards a carry and 7 rushing touchdowns. Over his time at Michigan, he did suffer some injuries throughout his career that would sideline him for some time, but he was never the main running back for the Wolverines, and even at some points he would struggle with weight issues. For his final year of eligibility, he would end up transferring to TCU for the 2016 season. In that 2016 season for the Horned Frogs, Greene was a backup running back, appearing in 8 games and only rushing the ball a total of 38 times. He rushed for a total of 141 yards, averaging 3.7 yards a carry, and had 2 touchdowns on the ground for the season. And just like that, his college career was over, and he didn't get much pro opportunity afterwards. He rushed for a total of 1,039 yards, averaging 4 yards a carry, and 9 total rushing touchdowns in his 4-year college football career. In my opinion, what I believe went wrong for Greene in his collegiate career was, yes, he did struggle with weight issues at times, and would be sidelined with some injuries here and there, but ultimately he could never be that main running back. He was never the starting running back, and he was never that go-to guy in that offense. He never had more than 83 carries in the season, and in fact, later on in his career, it kept on dwindling. 2015, 47 carries, 2016, 38. Moving on to the next player, from the class of 2014, Speedy Noel. He was one of the most highly touted players in probably modern recruiting history coming out of high school from the historic Edna Carr program in Louisiana. According to the 24/7 Sports Composite rankings, he was a 5-star, the number 10 player nationally, and the number 1 wide receiver in the class. He chose Texas A&M to go to college. Speedy Noel, just as a true freshman at Texas A&M, things were getting off to a very great start for his college football career, as he showed a lot of potential and a lot of flash day one as a freshman playing in the SEC. 12 games played, he had 46 receptions for 583 yards, averaging nearly 13 yards a reception and 5 touchdowns through the air. He was also a huge threat in the return side of things, and he had 645 kick return yards and 180 punt return yards in those 12 games played. Speedy Noel's fast start may have been very promising, however, that would be the best year of his college football career, and the next 2 seasons would be a sharp decline in production, playing time, and even the special team side of things in kick returns and punt returns. 2015, he had 21 receptions for 226 yards and 2 touchdowns, and was less of a factor in the kick return side of things. 2016, his final year at Texas A&M, 21 receptions yet again, had more receiving yards at 325, but also had the same amount of receiving touchdowns at 2. He would declare his name for the 2017 NFL Draft, where he ultimately went undrafted. In his college football career, he had 88 receptions for 1,134 yards and 9 touchdowns through the air. But why did he fail? Or to put it in better words, not really pan out. I think there is a few reasons why. Yes, he had a huge freshman year, but going into that 2015 season as a sophomore, he did have a little bit of an injury going in. He did play most of the season, but the emergence of Christian Kirk, a very young receiver, he became a top dog in that offense and ultimately took a lot of playing time away from Speedy Noel for the rest of his college football career, especially on the special team side of things as well. There's also another thing a lot of people like to point out is that later on in his career, he did have some off-the-field issues. They weren't the biggest off-the-field issues, but they were issues, to say the least, that would have him spend some time away from the team at some points and even be suspended a couple of games. You can also point out that he played with a number of quarterbacks while he was at Texas A&M those 3 seasons, just because, usually you play with 1, maybe 2 guys in your career, but he did play with more than 3, those quarterbacks being Kenny Hill, Kyle Allen, Kyler Murray, and Trevor Knight, just to name a few of the quarterbacks that actually got quite a bit of PT while he was there. But of course, Speedy Noel ultimately, his production and everything else went down after his freshman campaign. For the final player I'm going to be talking about in today's video, all the way from the class of 2009, Bryce Brown. Bryce Brown may have one of the most interesting recruiting stories in probably the modern recruiting history since the year 2000, which, if you guys want to hear that entire story, a whole video on him and his career, drop something down in the comment section below. But let's get back to the point. In the class of 2009, composite-wise, he was a 5-star, the number 2 player in the class, and the number 1 running back. He would end up committing to Tennessee. He would only end up spending 1 season at Tennessee, in which he was a second-string running back. He wasn't bad in that 1 season, but ultimately he was a backup. He rushed for a total of 460 yards, averaging 4.6 yards a carry and 3 touchdowns on the ground, while also accounting for 137 yards in the air and 1 receiving touchdown. Despite this, he would actually end up transferring to Kansas State. But he had to wait 1 season to play at Kansas State, so he sat out the entire 2010 season and would end up playing in the 2011 season, but not for long. He only played in 2 games before he left the team. In those 2 games, he rushed for a total of 16 yards, averaging 5 yards a carry. Despite not playing necessarily the most college football or having the biggest eye-popping numbers, he declared his name for the 2012 NFL Draft and actually is the only player in today's video that got drafted. As in the 2012 NFL Draft, he was taken in the 7th round by the Philadelphia Eagles. And he actually had a decent NFL career, especially for someone that had the college career that he did. He played about 4 years in the NFL with the Eagles, Bills, and Seahawks as a backup running back, and rushed for a total of 1,076 yards, along with 7 rushing touchdowns. To answer the question of why did he fail in college football, to answer it simply, he just didn't play enough, in my opinion. He was a backup his first year as a true freshman. He had to sit out an entire season because of the transfer rules then. And then the 1 year he was back and playing for Kansas State, he left the team early in the season. And then declared after said season. Well guys, you made this far in today's video. Drop something down in the comment section below. What videos you want to see me make in the future. And before you head out, remember to smash that like button, turn on those post notifications, and subscribe if you haven't already. B. Kelly out.